All right. Well, as everyone is trickling in, hello, good morning, good evening, depending on wherever you are in the world, keep dropping it in the chat. We are so excited to have you here. I'd like to welcome you to today's event for Data and Diversity, which is a series that provides a platform for community conversations surrounding the challenges and solutions of diversity in data. My name is Tiffany Hendrick, and I am an inclusive marketer here at Tableau, and I am honored to host this very important discussion today with Hunter and Adam. Before we get started, I just want to go over a couple housekeeping pieces. This session is being recorded, and we'll share it with everyone after today's event. If you have any questions for our presenters today, please make sure that you submit them using the Q&A function and not the chat. That way we can make sure all of them get in there, and we will have time for Q&A at the end. So with that being said, let's jump into this. So this month is Autism and Neurodiversity Awareness Month, and we wanted to take this chance to bring awareness and have an open conversation surrounding our neurodivergent community. We are joined today by Tableau Community members Adam Mico and Hunter Hansen, who will discuss their autistic experience in the context of Tableau and the broader data community. They will explore their approach to community engagement and how Tableau appeals to the neurodivergent users, as well as cover some neurodivergent-friendly design approaches. We are really excited to get to hear from them and their personal stories and experiences. So with all that being said, I'd like to welcome and introduce our guest speakers who are with us today. Thank you so much for being here, Adam and Hunter. How are you?
We're doing great, or I'm doing
here.
Great.
Yeah, I guess I could say great too. I'm here, so we're good.
Love it. I love it. I'm certain there will be a lot of people here who identify as being neurodiverse people and others who may not know much about what it means to be neurodivergent and how to engage with the neurodivergent community. So thank you in advance for your vulnerability and your openness in our discussion today. Adam,
thank you so much, Tiffany.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Adam is a Tableau visionary and social ambassador. He is the principal data visualization and enablement at Moderna. Before that, he worked as a Tableau evangelist for Kiris US. He is a certified Tableau and Tableau CRM consultant and an advisory board member with the Data Leadership Collaborative and a two-time Michael W. Christiani Community Leadership Award winner from the Tableau conference. So thank you, Adam. Very, very cool. He is also a big advocate and supporter of the diversity and inclusion efforts, particularly neurodiversity, as he is autistic. True to the Tableau mission of helping people see and understand data, he strives to elevate the data platform for all. He believes learning and supporting others is a lifelong pursuit. And then we've got Hunter. Hunter is a business analyst for a major consumer tech company. As a keen Tableau practitioner, Hunter designs compelling data visualizations and business dashboards that unlock operational insights and help surprise and delight along the way. His experience in corporate communications and organizational leadership have helped him shape narratives and bring deep empathy to the user experience. As an autism advocate, Hunter maintains The Life Autistic, a YouTube channel featuring personal exploration, semi-humorous stories, and helpful explainers about autistic experience. In conjunction with his work as a data professional, his speaking engagements cover neurodivergence and data design practices, dismantling autism stereotypes and bettering autism allyship in the workplace. Hunter lives in Denver with his wife and 3 daughters. Hunter and Adam, thank you so much for joining us today. The virtual stage is yours.
Cool. Thanks for having us. I guess I gotta go share. So I'm glad you all are here. I'm glad to be here, like literally. As I was telling our presenters, my nanny's been out this entire week with bronchitis. So that has made for a very calamitous week on my end. So I've been hanging with my youngest daughter and basically doing next to nothing at work, but she has slept through all my meetings, including this one so far. So if you see a child make her debut here, well, now you know why. But anyway, I'm Hunter. This is Adam. I'm going to go ahead and see if I can full screen this and kind of roll with that. So welcome to Neurodiversity and Data, Design and Community. I'm going to do a little bit of the design part, and then Adam is going to share some really great, rich insights on the Tableau community. So you already got our intros. You're basically just seeing me with different hair variants, which I don't look anything like this anymore. I think I just evened out and grew more in my beard this week than I did up top. But we both, as you can tell, are very involved and kind of intertwined in our respective Tableau data and autism communities. And that's kind of where we met and interacted. And it's been really great to partner with Adam on this two-man act we've developed here. We're both really passionate about what we do for like our work practice in terms of data visualization, design, really finding ways to bring our whole selves and our talents and our practices into it, but then also finding ways to where we can serve as advocates for autism and better understanding of neurodiversity and neurodivergence. So it's a real great thrill to be able to be Adam's opening act today and just share a little bit of our journeys, our practices, and educate others along the way. So I do have my chat open now. So I figured out Zoom to a little bit more today. So actually, let me click in. Yeah, there we go. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit and just kind of give you like the boring Webster's dictionary definition, which literally is the dictionary definition because that's where I lifted it, and talk about this concept of neurodiversity. You may see this more in vogue in general, because as adults are kind of figuring out why they're different and we're exploring different folds and categories of diversity, it's been really great to help introduce this concept of neurodiversity and neurodivergence and not limit it specifically to just a condition like autism or ADHD that we'll talk about. But essentially neurodiversity is just highlighting the individual differences in function that are still considered normal. Just like we have diversity across race and gender, culture, etc., we also have diversity of thinking, like literally our wiring and our brains working and wiring differently, and really exploring and promoting this concept that within what may be a very homogenous group, there may be a great diversity in just thought and social practice, communication, and a lot of times in just general challenges as well. So neurodiversity is essentially a concept that the differences in brain functioning within the human population, they're normal and it's not a cause for stigma. In fact, you probably work in neurodiverse workplaces with neurodivergent people. We are not all like one another, and even neurodivergent people are not like each other. Like Adam and I, we share a similarity in autism, but we're different. Adam is really sharp. He's kind. Me, I tell kind of cynical jokes, and there's other differences and variations, but also similarities that we embrace. So you're going to hear more neurodiversity in terms of neurodivergent and neurotypical individuals working in a similar setting. You may also hear me use the term neurodivergent when I'm referring to single people. I personally am not neurodiverse, but I am neurodivergent as opposed to someone who may be neurotypical. So that's kind of the starter. And don't worry, just kind of getting this out of the way. We're going to get to the good stuff in the practice here as we get rolling. So when we think about neurodiversity and neurodivergence, I will say that the one common thing that I see is that it tends to act as a cover for autism and autism spectrum disorder. But as good stewards, we want to be really accommodating and kind of promote accessibility and understanding for everybody. So neurodiversity doesn't just limit itself to autism, but this is also going to include those who have ADHD, so attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, which is actually, you may hear about that in more stigmatized contexts with kids, but if you're an adult, you can grow up with it and have it as well. This also includes some lesser known conditions like dyspraxia and dyslexia, which do include some challenges from some muscular challenging standpoints, as well as dyslexia, which is more like reading and processing words and numbers. And then you get into some others that are even less known, like dyscalculia, which is basically dyslexia for numbers. I would joke about having that, but I don't. I'm just bad at maths, period. And then Tourette's as well, which actually does follow under the neurodiversity umbrella. So as Adam and I and other autistic advocates go about this campaign, we do want to try to be broadly inclusive that, hey, we're going to speak from our experience, but neurodiversity really covers a lot of different things to where, hey, you may not be autistic, but you may have a different flavor of neurodivergence that's going to affect you in very different ways and also empower you to really tackle other challenges and advocate in those domains there. So I will give a few disclaimers as we kind of roll in. So as disclosed, Adam and I are both, hashtag actually openly autistic. So this is going to be presented from an autistic point of view and experience. So while you're probably going to walk away having a better understanding of neurodivergence, neurodiversity, and autism, design, and community, please understand that I'm not going to be speaking on behalf of others who may be able to do the same thing from an ADHD perspective, or those who suffer from dyslexia or face challenges with dyscalculia. I'm autistic, so invariably you're going to get an autistic perspective. Additionally, I do want to ensure that though we are talking about Tableau, we are talking about visualization and design, I'm going to use this as a springboard just to really, kind of broaden the perspective that it's not limited specifically, there we go, it's Friday, specifically to Tableau, but that this also applies to general data visualization and guidance and principles, irrespective of the tools and practice that you use. So, hey, Tableau does work really great for us, but there are things about Tableau that other tools, which are nameless, may also benefit. So if you're dealing with audiences who may favor a different kind of platform, you can still be really great allies from a neurodiversity and data visualization perspective. And then again, though we may be talking about some medical topics, that does not construe medical advice. I'm not a doctor, neither is Adam, I don't think, unless he's got a PhD in something I don't know about, could happen. But we're not here to really give or have anything be actively construed or misconstrued as medical advice. So disclaimers out of the way. Cool, we'll go ahead and jump in a little bit further. So I did want to talk about the things that make Tableau special. And I remember, it's like I'm getting into story time mode because I'm staring off into space. I remember back in my, the nascence of my career in organizational leadership, seeing this tool for the first time and just thinking like, whoa, wouldn't it be cool if I got to do stuff in this to where I can design these cool data visualizations, I can get really deep into the weeds. There was just something concrete about it that appealed to me, both from a technical perspective and a visual perspective. And that like really fired off a lot of my autistic and neurodivergent synapses, because it is a unique tool for unique individual neurodivergent people, especially when it comes to the visual aspect and the technical. Not every autistic person's the same. I mean, heck, I'm different from day to day sometimes. I wake up 5 minutes late. It's enough to ruin my day and I turn a little more sour, but we get up early, get a good tailwind to start the day, and then I'm fine. But that aside, there's different aspects that really appeal differently to different people. There's some aesthetic merit that Tableau really lets you go all in on, and I enjoy that. And then there's others who work more on like the Tableau prep, the data, the structures, the underlying technical guts of things. I mean, I'm not that smart. I can't figure out a prep flow. Sorry, should I have not said that? But I mean, it really appeals to those who love digging into the more technical aspects and building those gigantic calculated fields where you've got to like spread out the window. I can't do that, but others can, and they love it. Well, what's really cool is that it really helps harness this depth and breadth as well. I was like chatting with my wife beforehand, just talking about how one of the things I've loved about Tableau is that I can really drill down deep into this tool, what it affords, what it does, but what it's done for me. And Adam, I promise I'm not stealing your thunder here, but it's given me the opportunity to develop breadth in terms of knowing a little bit about a lot. I've supported, I want to say up to 6, 7, 8, many different lines of business at my company. And I've not worked in most of them, but Tableau and its depth have enabled me to better understand and become conversant with a lot of different stakeholders. So it's like I don't have to come up with small talk or remember what people are interested in, though I do. I have some commonality that allows me to like, it's like an entry key. And you may notice that as well, to where it's like, I have nothing in common with these people, but my ability to develop expertise in this one tool is kind of like my gateway into developing breadth to where I can really broaden my knowledge base. And from like a social standpoint, that's really appealing, because otherwise, what would I talk about? Like, not everybody's into watching BattleBots. So it's good that they understand their business and I understand Tableau and how it relates to their business. Yay. So in addition, and I think, you'll really get a lot out of the latter half of this presentation, is what it goes beyond and doing for you and for your business, but also in the community and the purpose itself. So this is more for like Adam's part of the talk, to where just on its own, the Tableau practice, the community, the hashtag DataFam, data farm, data farm would be interesting, but DataFam that's formed, that's just an amazing thing that Tableau offers. And for like autistic people, finding our tribe where we're so often the outsiders, Tableau, I mean, you're probably, unless you work with like a bunch of other Tableau people and nobody else, you may be an outsider even in your own business silo, but the group of Tableau users really gives you a broader sense of community and purpose. And I'll stop because Adam's got more eloquent points on that, but I do love that too, because then I can talk data with other data people. And then I feel like my weird autistic self belongs a little bit more. It's great. So that's funny. I said great. I actually put that in here. So Tableau is great for us, but how is it great for us? So I'm going to introduce you to not just why we like Tableau, but where Tableau can be better equipped to help elevate the neurodivergent experience, both from a user perspective and a design perspective. So we're going to go into like a little bit of technical detail on some things that I hope you didn't know anything about, but you'll come away thinking like, wow, even in my day-to-day design, I can be a better neurodivergent ally. So I kind of scaffolded this a little bit, like literally, because there's a scaffold, talking about good design. I typically don't disclose the company that I work for, but let's just say that there is a large tech company out there who really prides themselves on great design. And if you look at their products, really good design kind of gets out of its own way. I love to use products that are intuitive, to where I don't need a manual on how it works. Things that are accessible, to where I don't need to add so many appurtenances and appendages in order to get the most out of it. Unobtrusive, because all of these things are neurodivergent friendly. So in essence, if you're building something that's going to be quote unquote neurodivergent or autistic friendly, you're essentially raising a tide and in the process lifting all the boats in kind. And that's what I love about the practice of Tableau. That's what I love about the intersection between neurodivergent allyship and Tableau design. You would think these two disparate elements don't have as much to do with each other, but they do, as we'll demonstrate. So there's my memoji, what I used to look like with more hair up top versus my beard. So one thing I love to start out with, because I majored in English and history so that I could get away from taking maths in university, to great success, which I don't know why I'm in a data career where I do work with numbers, and that's another story. But the text, so Tableau, like one of my favorite finicky things is just the actual text itself. We do so much on like the bar charts, the visual orthodoxy, like how I can make the most serpentine, labyrinthine, Sankey chart that, gets me featured on Tableau Public. Yeah, that's great. But I'm a reader. Like I can just eat books. I mean, looking at pictures and stuff, I mean, that's cool. I get the visualization. I understand that bit. But I'm going to focus on your words, because I'm nitpicky about this kind of stuff. It's like, yeah, your kerning is bad. And, but that's just me. Some of us do focus on those details. Some of us are very lexically oriented. So I kind of give some of the gripes that myself and others think about, like the naming conventions bit. I don't like to bring that up, because then I look like I'm a critic. But naming conventions that don't make sense, I kind of give that muted expression. Or another common one, just in the general autistic experience, is why can't people just say what they mean? this actually extends not just from people hinting at what they want or saying something when they mean otherwise, when it's not said in sarcastic font, but also how you design your product to where if this is what it's supposed to mean, why does it say this instead? You'll see what I'm talking about. Or things that don't look consistent, where there's just a very small, almost unnoticeable detail, except to people who are hyper focused on details and just get graded. So I'll give a good example, and maybe you're already doing this. If so, awesome. Here's your junior badge for being a great neurodivergent ally. So kind of my quizzical response on a lot of this is that, many autistic people, myself included, we do struggle to intuit meaning and parse a lot of ambiguity. There are a lot of times, I'm sure Adam can attest to this, where everybody else gets it and picks up on it, and we just don't. And then it looks like a challenge if we have to ask, where like, why are we not in on the joke? Or why are we not in on what this is actually supposed to mean? That's isolating. And that makes us even feel more isolated than we already are in some cases. But the good news is that you can design for this. You can design to get in front of this challenge and elevate the experience for all. So let's just say you all are probably steeped within Tableau enough to where you don't do this, but maybe you see others who do. I don't know if Zoom has like a raise hands feature or whatever, but if I had a nickel for every time I saw people using more text fields and nomenclature like I do on the left, I'd have a lot of nickels, and it's always disappointing. And I see it on Tableau public things for people's resumes. It's like, oh, why do you do this? Why are you just using the field straight from the database without aliasing? But whatever, I digress. So to some, it may seem like, yeah, this is basic, but it's not just basic, it's foundational. And I'm going to explain why, like, even these little steps are actually really helpful for an allyship perspective. So one, it's not always obvious. These are just the little things to where, hey, I spent enough time getting the data right and the visualization right. I don't really need to worry about how I label things. The counter to that is that lazy design is disrespectful. Lazy design is just disrespectful. And like Adam's chiming in, like these are, again, it's good design is accessible and accessible to all. So finding ways to elevate to where this isn't just something to look nice, this is actually helping enhance understanding for an audience that you don't know you do, but you do cater to. Speaking of audience, it's like, wow, I do remember what I wrote here. I'm not trying to do this like in a fancy style, but your audience is not who you think they are. You may know who your stakeholders are, but sometimes your stakeholders don't even know who they are. I will be willing to wager out of my pile of nickels that your audience, who you may know very well, may not even be aware that they're neurodivergent. There's a lot of late diagnosed autistics out there who haven't quite figured out why they're different, or why routine bothers them, or why they jump out of their chair when their boss says, hey, got a sec? If you're a boss, don't do that, please. Thanks in advance. So your audience may not even know about themselves. So being able to accommodate and account for things that, hey, I don't know if they're bothered by this, but there's a chance they might be. Let me design for the things that they may not even know they need, which is kind of cool. So kind of in tandem with this is looking for ways to where, are there steps in this to where I can just clarify and reduce ambiguity? I'm also guilty. I'm autistic and I tunnel vision, I hyperfocus. It makes sense to me. So I have to think about, does this make sense to my audience who is not me? And how do I find ways to clarify this? How do I solicit opinions to where it's like, hey, you're right. I left this too ambiguous because I assumed I was the only one thinking of it like this way. How do I clarify it to where it's not just Hunter gets it, but Hunter's users get it? Sometimes I even have to quote, munch on my own dog chow for this, to where I have to think outside my own bounds, which is hard as an autistic / semi-narcissistic person, right? So this is good. So for you less or fewer narcissistic people, reducing ambiguity at each step, getting that feedback, finding like, is there a way I can make this even more clear? because it does help. And then tool tips. Again, if I had more nickels, I can tell when somebody's doing the work when I hover over a tooltip and then I just see it's like blah, garbage. You see like the database fields, columns, whatever. It's like, come on. I was expecting to be surprised and delighted, not surprised and defeated. Don't forget even these details. At every turn, you want to be able to show your audience that you can poke, you can prod. I don't want you to be confused. I want you to enjoy my work. I want this to be explainable because you care. And this isn't just for autistic people, it's for anybody in general. But again, this is kind of cutting off that ambiguity too. So yes, I love the base names. Yeah, I agree. So don't worry, there's some more. So then here's another example. And again, my blank, unamused stare. I know what some of you practitioners are thinking. Like, well, hold on, this guy's actually doing the right thing by not using a pie chart. Like, come on, Hunter, it's a donut chart. That should check off the box there. No, that's not checking off the box. I was trying to figure out whether or not these even add up to 100 in the first place. I didn't go through and count because counting is hard for me. But it's not the numbers and the plethora thereof that bother me. It's the color. I'm sorry, I don't like it. It's like a pastel nursery that just got profaned. So I may not be able to elaborate why I don't like it, but this is a common challenge among many autistic people, some less so than others, but the visual cacophony of discordant color. Did I tell you I'm a words guy? So yeah, all that, when the colors mesh and clash, it's bothersome. And not everybody's going to be able to articulate that, but many of your users may feel it. They'll feel it in their bones. So I'm trying to make that face there. So we can, we may have some proficiencies or deficiencies in pattern recognition, but a lot of sensory inputs in color, many other aspects, the hue, intensity, vibrance, whatever. It can be a micro, I don't want to call it a microaggression, but it's like a micro taxation to where I don't like the look of this. And if it's already not appealing to me, you've lost me, and it hurts. Your design choice just hurts me. So there is a better way. And I know we're kind of maybe overthinking the color aspect, but I'm going to give some helpful guidance to her. Hey, how can I think about colors when I need to use a lot of colors that are going to be more accessible, more neurodivergent friendly? Less is going to be more. As much as I will tell you this, personally, I'm what do we call them at work? The sand chart. So if you do like an area chart with a lot of colors, it looks like sand art. It's actually really cool. I enjoy that, but that's just me. I'm kind of weird. Not everybody does. Even neurotypical people don't always like that. So less is more. Sometimes you really only need to be drawn to certain important aspects. Tableau is generally not an art show. If it is, go for it. But unless you're in some kind of Tableau abstract art context, try to help your users out with this. So muted over bright. I'm not, though my disposition may be bright, I'm not much for like super bright palettes, as you can see by the bright color choices I've chosen to employ. Not everybody likes being visually assaulted with a lot of color. You can mute it, you can tone it down. Additionally, there's some tricks. My wife has 2 degrees majors in elementary education and commercial art. So her classroom is like this amazing, I didn't even know it was in rainbow order until she told me a year later, but she uses color wheels as ways to illustrate and teach students what colors match with which, what complements each other. Who knew there was such a thing? Like maybe ancient artists figured this out. I didn't, because I'm late to everything. But even a color wheel. Lawrence, your question about cross-section with those that are accessible, colorblind. Yes, all that. So I don't know if I have it on this point, but I can actually park really quick because there's like a Denver Broncos themed plug that I can put in here. Color wheels. And then if you really want to get a good understanding, like if you want to get really deep on this, figure out what colors naturally work and harmonize in nature. Blue sky, green grass, or here in Denver, brown grass, because we just don't get a lot of rain. So there are some natural things to where like from an evolutionary biological perspective, we are almost trained not to recoil from. And you can leverage this if you don't have any ideas. So if you're out of ideas or you can't afford a color wheel, just go outside. And then mixing and matching palettes just to figure out like, hey, maybe there's some test options there. I have to get to Lawrence's. That's such a good one. One of the reasons why I've adopted an orange blue color scheme, it's not because of my Denver Broncos fandom, go Broncos. It's more because I've learned and have been told that they actually work better than a red green palette for people with color blindness. I'm not a red green fan just because I'm Scrooge. I don't like Christmas in general, although I should. I got kids now, and so. But there's a lot of that is how am I being informed on this? That's where you may have to find ways to test it on certain websites, get an understanding of your audience. The white paper on color blindness, possibly. I mean, this is actually a pretty good topic. I'd love to see some chats on suggestions for when we are bound by branding colors by our employer. I have a cheeky response to that, but I think I've used up enough of my cheek on this as we've gone on here. But that's a good one to where you may be forced into some tough calls. So kind of scooting along because I want to give Adam enough time. Dashboard elements. There's upside down me because I face this design conflict a lot where overwhelm is a common thing. It's a common struggle. I like having options, but not too many options. I don't like dealing with a Cheesecake Factory level menu of options because at some point you get diminishing returns, you get overwhelmed. That's bound to happen and a lot quicker, especially with autistic people. And then again, kind of adding to decision fatigue. I actually maintain a report that has, I want to say 15 filters on the left. And I hate it. It's like, I just need to get rid of these. It's too many options and I don't even want to use it. And I'm not even a user. I just kind of keep the lights on. So there's elements to this to where, generally speaking, that you can have too much of a good thing in terms of filter options there. So yeah, this is my face after my nanny's been out this week. I've literally used this emoji quite a bit. I love my children, but parenting is work. I'm talking about Tableau, sorry. So clutter. I'm not a clutter guy. Even the presence of just many things can really be taxing to autistic people, decision making. It just adds these individual little steps that just add up. So ways to help. This is probably the toughest bit, but I would say that in general, it's okay if we have to dig. In general, that's fine. If it's not there immediately, it's okay if we have a way to dig into the details and the data. I just realized that Cheesecake Factory menu is geo-specific. I'm trying to think of a better global equivalent. They just have gigantic and menus with way too many options of frozen foods that they can make and 3,000 calorie pastas. So I'll leave it at that. Even legends are clutter. The only legends I like is Legends of the Hidden Temple because I wanted to be the host of that show on Nickelodeon when I was growing up. But I'm like so picky about legends. It's like I try to find a way to weave that into the design to where I don't have this unnecessary appendage there. So even things like that to where, how do I design this to where I'm not cluttering my own workflow? So it's better not enough than too much. Too much is repelling, but if it's not enough, you can always find ways to add the essential thing rather than face a bunch of choices to take things off the table. And then options. If I have to have a ton of filters, I've just resigned to creating like a lot of hidden custom menu options because I don't like being overwhelmed. I just don't. And many neurodivergent people, they don't like it either. So finding ways to open up that box differently. And then, but sometimes you've got to balance your audience. You've got to find a way to where I can't use 2 tabs on this dashboard. So I just have to use 1. So I will show you like an example of where I had to make this kind of hard choice. I have had to obfuscate this because my work is confidential, but you can see here from, actually, no, you can't. And I had to look really close because I forgot designing this thing. I can't tell you what this is, but I can describe it. And I've had to make these hard choices to where this isn't going to be as friendly as I'd like it to be, but I know where I need to compromise. I know enough about the limited audience. I know where I can stash and tuck away menus. I can make this as neat as possible. I can use as much space as Tableau will allow me. I can be very descriptive, even though I can't design certain things to where I can totally reduce the busyness of it. I can still find ways to where, hey, even in the details, even in the choices I do make, they're still going to be as beneficial at each turn. So I will admit, sometimes it's hard. It's hard to do, but it's work worth doing. So y'all are here because you didn't just stumble into this by accident. Like, these are, I assume I'm dealing with a very practiced Tableau audience, like Zens, visionaries, visionary Zens, whatever level we're at. I'm just as I put it, keen Tableau practitioner, which should tell you my skill level. This may seem like the basic stuff, which, okay, it may be, but the foundation of your house is also pretty basic, but it's important, or your condo, apartment, wherever you live. I want you to think about it in less of basic terms and more intentional, foundational ways that you really design to where I don't just do this because it's basic best practice. I do this because of all the other benefits it affords to my neurodiverse audience, whether they're neurotypical, autistic, have ADHD, or they're undiagnosed neurodivergent. That does happen. And then again, reminders that you may have heard probably a lot from one autistic person. As the saying goes, I know I could have Adam complete this for me. If you've met one autistic person, then you've met one autistic person. We're not all like, we're all very different. Though we do share some similarities, you're going to have a variety of users that you're going to appeal to. And it's a good learning experience. I'm still learning. And I still find myself doing non-autistic friendly things in my design, just because sometimes I get lazy. But it's a good check to realize that this is basic, but it's foundational, and it's going to appeal to the most broad and accessible audience possible. But let's say you are doing all this, like, oh, great, H, you told me again semi-humorous jokes. I'm just here for Adam, but I'm going to encourage you this. If you've already mastered it, what do you do with that information? Don't, as they would say, don't put that lamp under a bushel or a bed. You kind of have this light here. If you know these principles, you also have some additional firepower, thank you, on why these things matter. So when you're saying, hey, you really should alias these fields to where they're a little more legible, you're not that person who's being picky. You're actually being an advocate. You're advocating for design practice. So instead of, well, you're just saying that because you need to find something to nitpick and you're a visionary and you got to keep that. No. It's that this is foundational for reasons that now I'm trying to help teach. Think of all the Tableau users who don't even know this user group exists. They're not steeped in it enough to be a part of this community. They're plugging away in their silo, doing their best for their business. That best could be even better. And that's where you come in. Maybe you're the expert, you're the guru, you're the go-to who wows all the junior developers with parameter actions or whatever they're onto now. You have, I don't want to say a responsibility, but you have an opportunity and a privilege to advocate for those who are not practicing these things. If you're doing it, great, let that light shine. But for others who don't, you can help them elevate their experience. And now you've got some additional context that I hope doesn't just help you and not just helps others, but helps the neurodivergent community in general. So without further ado, I'm going to kind of pivot over to Adam to talk a little bit or a lot bit about where the community aspect comes in, because we are all here and Adam's got a great story to share. So I am all too happy to stop sharing and jump off and let Adam take it away from here. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone, and great presentation, Hunter. It's like basically following the neurodiverse Elvis, so please be kind to me. So my name's Adam Mico, and I'll be sharing DataFam and Autism, a match made in data. So the presentation is targeted to other autistic people, as Hunter shared earlier, and I can only really share through that lens. But with that, this may have some value to people who feel as though they're outsiders, introverts, or other neurodiverse people. So my story from 2019, before I joined the community, is that I was 44 years old. I was diagnosed autistic for nearly 10 years. I was a senior data analyst and kind of a disengaged hermit. So I didn't really feel like I belonged anywhere. And even though I was unhappy and lacked purpose, I did feel fortunate because I had a steady job, been married 20 plus years and grown and had a grown, well-adjusted son. So I worked toward my dream job and reached its peak, and basically could use remote control and click through in order to kind of make sure that I just past life until it was time for me to retire and move to a warmer climate that wasn't Wisconsin. So, and if you got the click reference, that's an Adam Sandler movie. So that's where you see the gray highlighted piece on the bottom. But 13 years is a really long time to feel unfulfilled. And I wanted to give something one last shot. And given that I just promoted to a peak position I could attain at my job with the state, I wanted to see if there's a way I can give back. So I kind of dug into the Tableau community, and I'll get more into that in a bit, but I want to kind of share what today is like. So now I'm 46 years old, almost 47 in about a month, about 2 months. Today I'm Moderna's Principal Data Visualization Enablement. In 2022, I was named a Tableau Visionary. In 2020 and 21, and currently I'm a Tableau Social Ambassador. I was fortunate enough to earn the Michael W. Christianity Community Leadership Award in 2020 and 2021. I recently received a contract to write a book with Pact Publishing related to Tableau, and now I'm a husband, father, and grandpa. So what changed? So a couple of years went by, a lot of things changed for me very quickly. And it's really difficult, even especially if you're not prepared for it, to deal with change, especially those of us that are neurodiverse. So I had a lot of problems with communities in the past. I just never felt like I fit in. So either I was part of it and just got very disinterested right away, or I got involved into a topic that was just kind of for me and not really part of anything anybody else was doing. So with Tableau, I wanted to give it one more go. I loved the software because it helped me become a data analyst, and that was exciting for me, and it helped me share what I loved and share with other people who also loved it. So I went through a number of different places, and I finally landed on Facebook, where Tuan Wong, who's now a two-time Tableau visionary, realized that he shared that there was a Tableau community on social media. I didn't really want to do the Twitter thing or LinkedIn or anything like that, but I'm like, you know what the heck, I'll do it. But like right away, as soon as I was part of the social media community related to Tableau, there's just thousands of many like-minded people that were very open and willing to discuss not just about visualizations, which could be boring to a lot of people in a short period of time, but you shared your life with them. So basically, it was a community that its goal was not only to share what they do or brag about their data visualizations, but they're really looking to help other people out and making sure that there's a common goal with impact. And I think that's a very important thing for neurodiverse people. If they're really giving it a go on something, it has to have some sort of value and some sort of impact. It's hard to do anything and see the value, at least long term, if there's really no impact. So the global community fortunately accepted me and welcomed my participation. And even before I received any sort of titles from Tableau, right away I felt I was part of it, and I wasn't a social ambassador. I wasn't a busy winner. I didn't have any business of the day early on or Tableau visionary. They just let me be part of it, and I was able to grow. I felt I can contribute all I wanted to contribute, regardless of title. So there is no hierarchy there, and that made me feel great about being part of something, because I felt it was really inclusive for me and people like me. So quickly, I kind of stopped being a disengaged hermit and wanted to do more and be more part of it and do everything I could, because it felt like something that was really important, not only for me, but for a lot of other people, because you could see the success stories others were having. It was just great to be part of it, and feeling like you could, even as a person that didn't feel like they belonged anywhere, with this community, I could take a virtual trust fall, and knowing that if you believed in yourself a little bit and you stopped resisting taking a step forward, it also helps to be in a place in life where you think change is necessary. So all those things kind of added up, and I was very much a part of the Tableau community from the onset. And I believe my first day on Twitter was August 3rd of 2019. And it was just, since then I've been on Twitter, LinkedIn, and so forth. And I didn't have any really accounts in my name or anything like that. But it's been so much fun since then, and just seeing so many great stories of other people, not just neurodiverse people, neurotypical people, and everybody under the sun in one big global place. So now I want to go into some of the myths about autistic people, because a lot of people think autistic is one thing, and it's kind of disappointing when you see the stereotypes and how autistic people are portrayed in media and whatnot. So one myth is autistic people dislike neurotypical people. So we're all very different, as Hunter alluded to earlier, even autistic people. But with me, I didn't really engage and try to make friends or anything like that, because I didn't really have much in common with people in my real life. And their interests were not my interests, and it would kind of drain me. So it would result in small talk and stuff like that. How's the weather? And there's only so many times in a day where you could, if you're a neurodiverse person, especially an autistic person, hear talk about weather and not knowing where to go next, because you're just like, okay, here's that talk, and I don't know how to follow that up because it's small talk. It's not something with purpose. So I like when people have shared interest, and those that work with me on contextual issues. So the other thing that the DataFam often helps with, and neurotypical people, especially if they care and they reach out to you, is that in my experience with the DataFam, they always looked at me as somebody, they always supported me. So they wanted to make sure that I was comfortable and made it so I didn't feel like I had to mask 100% of the time, and I could really be my authentic self. So, and when you have that release, it really gives you the opportunity to break new ways and do something impactful. The other myth is autistic people cannot build relationships. So it's very difficult for autistic people to build relationships with people that aren't autistic in many cases. Growing up, it takes a lot of failed attempts. You lack kind of motivation to do so because, as I mentioned before, a lot of people you don't have a lot in common with, and willingness of others to work with you and understand and accept your obstacles. So people generally get from us are loyal, honest, and helpful people that can be a go-to when you're looking for a logical problem solver, or need objective reasoning, or need some sort of weird reference that's a joke. People tend to do like it to enjoy us that way. But with that, rather than doing this naturally, it takes a great deal of effort on both sides, and for a relationship to be successful. So again, there's a lot of different types of people with autism. Some people are more extroverted, some people are more introverted, some people like to talk a lot, some people are nonverbal, and that's where I'm going to next. So another myth is that all autistic people are nonverbal, which is some autistic people, it takes a long time for them to verbalize or feel comfortable in a setting to verbalize. Some have selective mutism, but we're all very different. So although unnatural, we can learn to be more verbal and consider troubleshooting to improve, to build those relationships. It's more natural for me to write than to talk. So it takes a long time, and it takes common interest for me to be really excited about talking with people. But when I do it, it's just as rewarding as any other conversation anybody else could have. So, but regardless, when you're working with an autistic person or a neurodiverse person, they process information a little bit different. So with me, I have to be mentally prepared to be involved in conversations a lot of time, and I have to have a desire to adapt. And that's kind of one of those things that you have to consider with other people that are neurodiverse or autistic. So the other myth is that autistic people cannot participate well in communities that aren't autistic focused. There are autistic communities, and there are people in every community that are neurodiverse and or autistic. They may not share that with you, but they're part of the communities. They may not be the most vocal people, they may be lurking or whatnot. It's not our job to determine who's neurotypical or neurodiverse, but we have to be adaptable and acceptable of people and really work with them in order to engage everybody and be as an inclusive community as possible. So we tend to thrive in communities with a common interest, limited social divides and rules, and opportunities to be heard with limited judgment. Of course, it takes a long time for many of us to work out some of the social rules and also some of the soft skills, and it's hard to understand them without understanding the pitfalls that go along without following them. So it's more of a learned thing rather than an innate thing for many of us. But if you're a neurodiverse person and love visualization, our DataFam is a great place for autistic people. So next up, I'm going to talk to you about what makes DataFam autism friendly. So our community focuses on a topic that many people with autism can appreciate. So data analysis. So it's something we could really dig into and share our insights and help people understand what we see. Design may come a little bit less naturally, but is of interest to a lot of us as well. So our DataFam, since the moment I arrived, and it's even bigger and more global now, is that they focus on inclusion. And I never felt that I was stigmatized because I had autism, even though I shared that right away when Hunter, one of the first weeks or days I joined the community, I noticed Hunter's blog, and he was a very prominent member of the DataFam. And I was just so happy to see that somebody was so out with it when it wasn't really something I experienced before. And everybody was kind of supportive of his work and so forth. And I love what he wrote and what he shared, and later on with his YouTube videos. So sharing his experience helped me open up for the first time in public that I also had this as well. Before that, I only told a handful of people because it was really nobody's business, but I didn't feel like I could be my authentic self without sharing that piece of it with me and really feel like I was involved in the community and could be really a passionate contributor of a community if I couldn't share that really important aspect of my life. And one thing I also noticed is that there are communities where people tolerate discrimination or disdainment of other people or thought process and so forth. This community, from my experience, has been very supportive of others and making sure that people aren't put in a situation where they're not comfortable, and trying to make sure that you have your support that's needed and don't make a real show out of it. And that's something I really appreciate as well. So the other great thing about our community is that there are so many ways to make an impact and find purpose. We have so many community projects. One of the things you could do is go to search DataFam on Twitter or LinkedIn, and you'll see a bunch of stuff. It's basically a feed of inspiration. If that's too overwhelming for you, and now if I started the community in 2022 instead of 2019, it may have been, one thing I would suggest is go to Tableau.com community. They really do a great job of getting the best resources out there for you and highlighting those really important resources from our community. And again, if you prefer an introduction or tools to get started, feel free to reach out to me. I'll share my information on our network. So I'll just, that's another thing. I'll make sure that we can have those shared interests and so forth, and make sure that you have an introduction to community. And you don't have to come out and say, I'm autistic or anything like that. But if you just want somebody to share and introduce you to the DataFam, that's something I would be happy to do. And make sure, feel free to tell me what you want me to share and what you don't want me to share, and I'll be very discreet. And here's where you can find me. I have a blog on it's Adam Mico on medium.com. On Twitter, I'm Adam Mico1. Apparently, Adam Mico was taken. On LinkedIn, I'm just Adam Mico. In Tableau Public, I'm also Adam Mico. Thank you so much.
Oh, Tiffany, you're muted. Sorry.
Of course, it's live. Of course I'm muted. You know, just everyone needs that awkward moment, right? So thank you all. That was amazing. You've seen the chat is going nuts, and we have a lot of questions to get to. So we are just going to dive right in. So what I'll do is I'll just pose the question and you two can ping pong and
Duke it out.
Yep, that's right. That's right. All right. So first up from Kimberly, I'm trying to develop a palette with my company's branding colors. Is there a way to test the palette to see if it's neurodivergent friendly? Are there any resources that you can share?
That's a good one.
Good question.
Exactly. I've never thought of that. Like how I think my default is that if I don't have enough input, it's like I may have to seek it. Like if I was to test, yeah, go for it, Adam, jump in.
So one of the things I tend to do, because it works for me, and I think it just looks cleaner to a lot of people, is that I reduce the opacity of the color marks when you're creating a visualization in Tableau. Generally, at the most, so it's 80% with 20% transparency, because I like to see. I don't want it the full color pop. I want a good color pop, but not a full color pop. Enough to see the differences, but not too much where you feel overwhelmed. So any palette pretty much is better when you adjust the transparency. Even if you have a really ugly brand palette, you could work with it in many cases if you work with the transparency of the color marks.
Yeah, I think because in it, one, I do like that trick sometimes, but then it's like, this overlap is weird. Find ways to test it. You know, sometimes if I don't know, I just need to bring in a broader audience to expose myself to corner cases that I was not aware of. In the absence of software that would help me test for color blindness or difficulty, but knowing that I needed to account for it, I would try to find maybe others who specialize more in accessibility, or just get like, hey, of my stakeholders, I'd love your thoughts. What works for you in this? What doesn't work? And some of the commentary may actually be very insightful, whether you do it live, whether you do it in a different forum. But sometimes you may not know what to test for until you bring it to a broad enough audience who may give you the inputs you need on that.
Yeah.
And I guess one more quick trick I'll share on that. So the Hunter's point about you don't like to overlap. So one other trick I do is I set the color to the transparency level I like. Make sure I have that the hex code of that color, and then set it to 100. And do that for each of those colors. If I don't like the overlap, but I want a little bit muted color there.
Okay, awesome. All right, so the next question we have is from Dominique, and she is asking, how do people get diagnosed as neurodivergent? If someone feels different, how do they understand that diversity?
I'm going to reference our disclaimer real quick. Just that, again, we can't give any like sanctioned medical advice, but we can share from experience. Adam, I know you were more later diagnosed, so I'd love for you to kind of elaborate on that.
So in my particular case, I knew that there was something. I didn't know what I was dealing with at the time. I didn't know there's a number of different potential diagnoses that kind of overlap with that. And I didn't know if I had any of them. So I wanted to know what I was dealing with. I had no idea what I was dealing with until I got an actual diagnosis. And I'm like, at that point, you sense a little bit of relief knowing that there was something you knew and you had some tools to work with and how to find happiness. Because I think the problem was, at least in my particular case, and this would happen with a lot of people, I assume, that are neurodiverse, is that it's not autism or ADHD or anything like that that's the culprit. It's the anxiety related to those issues and having to deal with them and not knowing how to wage that battle and feel comfortable in your own skin. And that's kind of what I was dealing with at the time, and knowing that I could address that and address, most importantly, the anxiety end of it, that helped me quite a bit. So I knew I had to prepare more. I can't just jump in and do something if I wasn't prepared. And knowing that I had to prepare gave me a little bit more freedom, and it helped me adjust a little bit more. Whereas before, I really didn't know. And if people asked me to do something and I wasn't mentally ready for it, it was hard for me to deal with. But knowing that I have to give myself at least a little space to deal with something, it was super important to get that diagnosis and work with that. So yeah, if you do have those questions, I would suggest that you talk with your physician, and then recommend, and that physician could recommend a person that you could work with and get a proper diagnosis. And it may not be what you think you have. So don't assume because you have some traits that are similar to other people that have that diagnosis, that's what you have. So you have to be prepared to be disappointed. You may have another diagnosis that you're not happy with, but you'll have at least something to deal with and start to be able to build the tools to work on that.
Yeah. And you both talked a lot about your journeys. And can you share a little bit about how you navigated being diagnosed as neurodivergent?
I'll let Hunter have that one.
I know mine. I refer to mine more as like a proxy diagnosis and discovery, because it occurred relatively early in my life as a 16-year-old. So I'm kind of like the rare bird in this age, because I've known about it. But my approach was similar to Adam's. It was a lot of stigma and shame. Like, knowing I was weird didn't change the fact that I was still socially maladroit and didn't get along with people. And I tried to mask it as much as possible. So if you hear that term, it's basically how autistic people study the human condition and present as neurotypical, to where, I may seem like gregarious and fun. It's because I've done this talk 5 times. I know the beats of it. I know the jokes. Like, I can piggyback off of this. You're not going to surprise me. But if I was in a mixer with you all, 1, that's awkward because I don't drink, but 2, it's like somebody talk to me about robot combat, chess, strongman. Otherwise, I'm going to try to find a Tableau topic and just nod and smile and try to sweat internally. So a lot of it is masking. But I led kind of a life of wanting to suppress and hide it and thinking I could grow out of it. It just led to a lot of friction and anxiety and just other maladies, until I said, what, out with it. Why don't I just do a blog and a YouTube and go the other direction and learn more about it? And then I discovered I am not alone in this. So that's kind of my journey in a nutshell.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Adam, did you want to add anything, or?
I pretty much covered a lot of it before, but just knowing what I was dealing with and not knowing exactly how to deal with it before, that's what made it really difficult for me in navigating life. During that point, I was increasingly unhappy, even though I was diagnosed, and I was still unhappy after I was diagnosed, because I didn't really, I was kind of clicking through life and just kind of clicking the fast forward button until retirement. It wasn't, it was something that I could deal with, as opposed to having more and more troubles, because it took a lot for me to even consider going that route and seeking a diagnosis for anything, because I had no idea what it would be. I thought, probably a 60-70% chance this is it, because there's plenty of tests online you could take, but it could be something else. And I didn't know if I was completely prepared for it. So I had to be in a point where I was kind of hopeless and be like, okay, I need something. I need to work on something, but I need to know what I need to work with, so I can improve and try to work toward that.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you for sharing, Adam. All right, we've got some more questions. This one is from Adam. It's a 2-part question. As a teacher of and advocate for data visualization, I include inclusivity in my teaching and think about it all the time. How would you suggest incorporating neurodiversity into teaching and advocating about data viz?
Well, this is a great question. Well, including neurodiversity in data viz is a relatively new topic, and there are sparse resources out there for that. I think the main focus until there are more resources on that is consider accessibility. So a lot of rules that apply to accessibility apply for neurodiverse people as well. So when you're building toward an audience, you want to provide as much context as possible, but don't overwhelm with a lot of words or a lot of color on a data visualization. You want to make it clean, crisp design, but provide more context, let's say in a tooltip, for example, so you have a lot more opportunity to see what's behind it if need be. And we kind of like to dig if we find something of interest, but if there's too much on top that clouds whatever interest one would have, it's like, this is just too much, I'm not going to look at this. And I think that applies to a lot of people that are seeing visualizations that are done with when there's too much there's no white space, there's a lot of color, a lot of words, and it's just overwhelming. So you just see this big blob in front of you that's really kind of really cloudy surface, and it's hard to like dig into or be because you're overwhelmed. And I think that happens to a lot of people, regardless of whether you're neurodiverse or not. But it's really important for those that are neurodiverse to have something clean to work with and be able to dig down and drill down as needed, and knowing that they can do that. So if you have a dashboard with one chart, no words and no tooltips, we're just going to be as confused as we would if we saw a bunch of colors, 40 charts, and tooltips that are a mile long. So you just have to practice a clean design, not too much color. Color has to have some sort of relevance. So if you're using color, it has to mean something. Otherwise, that's confusing to us and confusing to a lot of people.
Can I take the second half of that question?
Sure. I forgot what it was, so thank you.
Oh. No, it's the second one about raw data, because I have like a sushi bar joke about this. Oh no, Adam, you covered everything I was going to do, so I want this next one.
Sure.
All right, so we have time for just two more quick questions. So one more quick question. So I want to wrap up the second part of Adam's, and then we'll get to yours, Arthur, and then we want to be respectful of everyone's time. So the other part of that question is, given how you've both talked about data visualization is both visual and technical, could giving audiences access to the raw data, allowing audiences to explore the data themselves, be more neurodivergent friendly?
It depends.
I'm going to say it. I actually have some practical cases on this that I've only recently figured out. Generally speaking, I hate doing it. I don't like it. It's like, if you want the raw data, come take my job so I can do other stuff. But I have actually opened up some dialogue to better understand the need. And I know I work closely with some undisclosed, undiagnosed neurodivergent people to where it's challenged my assumption. Unfortunately, I do have a growth mindset, so I'm still experiencing growing pains to where I kind of see it from their perspective now, to where the unfortunate stereotype is that people who ask for the raw data just want to go do irresponsible things with the data. Sadly, that still happens. So I've had to be accommodating to where some people's style may be so bespoke because they are focused. They may not know why. They may have to go through a series of steps to process it. It's challenged me to find a way to build elegant design that can still provide some raw data for specific purposes and do it elegantly to where, hey, if you don't need this, I want to make it so where you don't, but if you absolutely do, there's a tiny way to where I can elegantly provide this, knowing that you're going to be responsible with it. So there's some tough choices. If it was all black and white, great, but sometimes it's tricky.
And the neurodiverse people, even autistics, we're not a one size fits all. So some people really love to dig into raw data. I find it fun, but other people would be like, oh, this is horrible. This is disgusting to work with. And it's just like too overwhelming because I don't know what to look at and what to look for. So it kind of depends on the person, just like anything else. Neurotypical people, some neurotypical people may want to dig in raw data. Other neurotypical people may just want to look at the viz. Maybe there's a higher percentage neurodiverse people that want to look at the raw data, but it's certainly not a one size fits all. So it depends, and maybe you could ask them. That would be a starting point is, what do you feel more comfortable with? Do you feel more comfortable working with the raw data, or do you want to work with the data visualization part after the raw data is cleaned?
Okay, all right, great. Well, we are right at time, so I'm sorry if we didn't get to your questions. There were a lot of really great ones, but thank you everyone for attending today. I hope that you learned about ways data and analytics can be used to create a more inclusive, diverse, and equitable future for everyone. And thank you to everyone who engaged with us and the wonderful questions, and everyone in the chat. It's been such a great conversation. Be on the lookout for the recording. I did see a question about that. This is being recorded, and for some of the resources that were mentioned during this event. But before we say goodbye, I wanted to share a couple of things coming up at the greatest data event of the year, which is Tableau Conference. TC is set for May 17th through the 19th, and it will be our very first hybrid conference. So it's going to be online and in person, and it's going to be a data experience like no other. You can join us in Las Vegas for TC22. In-person tickets are $1,900 US, or attend virtually for free. And with that conference, I want to particularly call out two very exciting sessions that we'll be having. We'll be live streaming these sessions straight from Las Vegas, so be sure to tune in and save your spot. We're going to have Data and Diversity, the Engine for Innovation. And this one's going to be an intimate fireside chat with Tableau EVP of Marketing, Jackie Yaney, and Chad Foster, excuse me, the first blind executive to graduate from Harvard Business School and current executive for Red Hat. And they'll be sitting down to talk about how DE efforts can be the engine for innovation. And also we'll have Data and Women, Bridging the Gender Gap, with Kyla Guru. Kyla is a social engineer who has started 2 grassroots nonprofit organizations, and she is full of bright insights and perspectives of how we can better bridge the gender gap in technology. And there's another community session that is not listed on this slide, but that will go into building accessible dashboards. And that session will be available virtually. So tune in if you want to learn more about incorporating accessibility into your business dashboards and how to review them using Chartability and Accessible Audit Framework. And with that, we will leave you to the rest of your day, your evening, wherever you are in the world. And we hope to see you in future Data and Diversity events here at Tableau. Thank you, Hunter. Thank you, Adam. And thank you, everyone, for coming.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for coming. Cheers.